So what exactly does this new large-scale ban mean? Can it really make it harder for Ukrainian drones to do their job?
And will a closed sky help Russians hide from the reality in which the war has already reached Moscow? On Russian turbulence, Yevgenia Tereshchenko.
Russian airports are in turmoil. Flights are being cancelled, delayed, or rescheduled.
Dear passengers,
as a direct consequence of the temporary closure of the airspace for safety and security reasons, all flights are currently delayed indefinitely.
Passengers are sleeping on their suitcases and waiting for hours for their flights.
It's unclear if there will be a departure at all today. They didn't let us leave.
The reason for this aviation spectacle is Ukrainian drones, which force the Kremlin to keep pressing the alert button.
Here's one, and there's another. It took off, and now it's going to fly away. Incredible.
Because of drone attacks, Russia regularly imposes the carpet regime.
In other words, this essentially means closing the relevant airports for arrivals and departures of aircraft. The introduction of the carpet regime primarily brings financial losses. That's why we see that in the case of large-scale implementations of these so-called carpet regimes, typically for a single such incident, Russian airlines collectively incur losses ranging from $10 to $50 million.
Just in May, such restrictions were in effect in Moscow, the Moscow region, Nizhny Novgorod, and Samara. For the first time, the carpet regime was even introduced at Kaliningrad Airport, and this city is located outside the main territory of Russia.
A stopover in Kaliningrad. Absolutely all flights are delayed to Moscow, to Cheboksary, to Kazan, to St. Petersburg.
And then the Kremlin imposes yet another ban, closing the skies. Starting in June, Russia plans to restrict civil aviation flights at altitudes up to 5,100 meters in the so-called Moscow airspace zone.
This is the Russian leadership's response to the constant drone attacks, which have now, essentially become routine, and are reaching targets as far as the pre-Urals and even the Urals themselves. It's worth noting here that this airspace zone will not be limited to just Moscow. In fact, they want to ban, starting from early June, civilian flights all the way to Yekaterinburg.
The section of airspace around the Russian capital will cover 12 regions. Almost the entire European part of the Federation will be off-limits to civilian aviation flights.
This has been done in order to reduce the number of so-called friendly fire incidents or accidents when Russian air defense shoots down civilian helicopters or civilian aircraft, as happened, for example, in Tatarstan when a regular light aircraft was mistaken for a drone and they opened fire.
The reason for introducing the new restrictions is fear of drones. The Russian air defense system does a poor job dealing with massive attacks. It is expected that clearing the airspace will make the work of air defense easier.
Previously, it required a certain level of complexity in terms of verifying whether the target was really a drone or if it was a small airplane or a helicopter, but now essentially Russia will destroy all such targets.
However, this will not solve the major problems, namely the shortage of air defense systems and the lack of effective means to counter drones.
They are firing the same missiles from the Pantsir systems or other missiles from other air defense systems at drones that actually cost dozens of times less. And this creates a double effect because quite often these countermeasures are ineffective on the Russian side, but at the same time, once again, the drones reach their targets and cause direct damage. And the indirect damage is precisely the costs for air defense systems and the missiles for them.
Moscow will not be left completely without airplanes. Regular passenger flights and charters are promised to be maintained. Medical aviation in particular will also not be affected. The Kremlin understands if civil air travel is completely halted, the number of people outraged by the war will only grow.
We should carefully consider and take into account the significant fact that the overall level of public popularity for Russia's ongoing war against Ukraine is now drastically and fundamentally different from the widespread level of support we saw for the war back in, say, the year 2023. Right now, the level of support has absolutely decreased and the war is already on Russian territory.
It's not just threats and restrictions that are getting on the nerves of the Russian population, but also financial losses. The flight ban, which is supposedly meant to ensure safety, has already been called the final nail in the coffin of civil aviation.
In fact, this will lead to the situation where, essentially, small aviation in the Moscow area, as well as private jets and helicopters, will basically stop making any flights at all. We will see this quite soon, as the area of such restrictions is very likely to expand.
Private flights are becoming impossible. Training flights as well. The war that the Kremlin planned to wage somewhere far away is increasingly affecting the lives of Russians themselves, and the effect can be intensified.
That's quite an interesting question. And in general, the activities of Russian ports and airports. Actually, here I think that perhaps in the future the Ukrainian command will somehow pay more and more attention to this issue. That's it. Because the shutdown of civil aviation for Russians would be quite a painful blow. Again, these are also financial losses. Russia, again, is bigger than Ukraine, and covering distances will be much harder.
But for this, not only Ukrainian drones need to fly into enemy skies.
During a high-level strategic meeting with our most senior military commanders, detailed information was presented indicating that our ballistic missiles are currently undergoing a series of rigorous field tests. In this case, it's necessary to strike Moscow because they need to feel the war there.
Yevgenia Tereshchenko, We Are Ukraine, Marathon United News.
NATO is convening an emergency meeting after a Russian drone strike on a residential high-rise in Romania. 2 people were injured there, and this is the most serious incident on the territory of a third country since the start of Russia's large-scale aggression. The EU states that Moscow has crossed yet another red line and is preparing the 21st package of sanctions. NATO condemns the strike on a member country of the alliance and calls it reckless, while Romania is closing the Russian consulate general and expelling the consul.
But Russian propaganda immediately launched a disinformation campaign claiming that this is a planned provocation by Kyiv to drag NATO into the war. But in Brussels, they understand. The Kremlin is raising the stakes, and regular incursions of combat aerial targets into the airspace of European countries are a direct threat to the security of the entire region.
Several EU officials responsible for national security have warned, let Moscow try to test NATO's unity by striking one of the Baltic countries. So what are Europe and NATO doing for self-defense? These are the first minutes after a Russian drone struck a 10-story building in the Romanian city of Galati. And for the first time since the start of the large-scale war that Russia is waging against Ukraine, destruction of this magnitude has been recorded on NATO territory, specifically due to Moscow's actions. After the strike on the building, a fire broke out. 2 residents were injured and hospitalized. 2 others suffered panic attacks. The strike occurred while the Russians were attacking Odessa region with drones. The Romanian Ministry of Defense confirmed it was indeed a Russian drone of the Geran type. It was detected when it crossed the border. 2 F-16 fighter jets and a helicopter were immediately scrambled, but they did not manage to neutralize it, partly due to lengthy ongoing legal procedures.
We must realize that such situations have happened before and may happen again.
Bucharest is already taking strict diplomatic measures. The Consul General of the Russian Federation in Constanța has been declared persona non grata, and the diplomatic mission itself will be completely closed.
Last night we had a serious incident in which 2 Romanian citizens were injured, and all responsibility for this incident lies with Russia, a country that has been waging an aggressive war against Ukraine for more than 4 years.
The European Union has stated Moscow has crossed yet another red line. They emphasize that they are intensively preparing the 21st package of sanctions against the Russian Federation.
Russia's war of aggression has crossed yet another boundary. The European Union will continue to strengthen security and deterrence capabilities, especially on the eastern border, and will increase pressure on Russia. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission.
Ukraine warned as early as last year that EU countries would be Russia's next target and called for preparations for a possible attack. The bloc acknowledged the danger but was in no hurry to act. This week, NATO announced the formation of a separate army corps of 60,000 troops to defend the Baltic countries. The main forces are planned to be stationed in Estonia and Latvia. Germany and the Netherlands will lead the project. However, it is still unknown when these decisions will take effect, as well as when air defense capabilities in this region will be strengthened.
The Russian-Ukrainian war and Russia's aggressive policy toward Ukraine and its neighbors may soon lead to a situation that requires a decisive response. I am convinced that NATO will take any potential threats and provocations very seriously, let's call them what they are, which are already manifesting themselves, especially with regard to our Baltic neighbors.
Poland is confident that Russia could attack one of the bloc's countries in the coming months. Proof of this was last year's massive provocation organized by Moscow when it launched more than 20 drones into Polish airspace. Only 4 were shot down. The local Ministry of Defense is convinced that Russia was testing the air defense system on the alliance's eastern flank. Currently, infrastructure is being built in 12 regions of Poland for the American military contingent, 5,000 soldiers whom the United States is relocating from Germany. Just recently, construction of a base for housing military equipment was completed in Powidz. This week, Finland also experienced an incursion when a Russian military aircraft entered its airspace. The response from the Finnish Air Force was immediate. Fighter jets were scrambled into the sky. According to the Russian version, their plane was hiding in Finland from a thunderstorm. The investigation is ongoing.
In similar situations, Romanians should understand that Russia poses a threat to the security of countries in the region, and the war it is waging against Ukraine affects all the countries on NATO's eastern flank, not just them.
The official Bucharest called the strike of a Russian drone on a residential building a serious and irresponsible escalation on the part of Russia. Romania convened a meeting of the Supreme Council of National Defense, while in Russia they are threatening that their drones will continue to enter EU countries, claiming that Europe is helping Ukraine in the war against the Russian Federation. After the Russian attack, Romania considered the need to invoke Article 4 of NATO, which does not provide for a military response, but rather consultations with the member countries of the alliance. Poland invoked it after last year's massive attack by Russian drones. The alliance headquarters also responded. They promised to strengthen the defense of the alliance. Anna Hrishina reporting from Brussels. We are Ukraine. United News Marathon.